Hello, I'm Mandi McLeod. Welcome to Straight Talk. In this edition, Fonterra prepares to farewell its Canadian CEO as the board searches the world for his replacement. What will this mean for our dairy industry? The government gets tough and beefs up its weed and pest strategy on Crown land, pouring more money into our pastures. And GE foods are now a major part of American diets. How about here at home? Joining me today is Peter Buckley, Chair of Environment Waikato, and Jenni Vernon, a sheep and cattle farmer from Waikato. Welcome.
Morning. Andy.
Peter, Minister Carter's announced this strategy for weed and pests on Crown land, mainly, I think, down in the South Island. What's it actually going to mean for our pastoral farmers?
Oh, first and foremost, Mandi, it's just not for the South Island. We have a huge issue of weeds on Crown land here. And for us, it's actually going to... For the farmers out there, it's not going to mean a lot to them, but it actually means that the Crown are going to actually be good neighbours and can actually, control their weeds on their land without us having to rate for, the public out there for that. So I think it's a great move, and I really applaud the government for bringing that forward.
Jenni, what do you think about that as from a farming perspective? And also, you're not a farmer. You mix in many circles. What do you think about this?
I think it's really exciting, Mandi. I mean, for many years, a lot of the private farmers have actually been saying, but look across the fence, the government doesn't care, they're not putting the money in, they're not dealing with weeds, why should we? So I think it ups the ante for everybody, both private individuals and Crown land. I think it's really exciting. And good on the government. It's expensive and they've got a lot of land. But I think ultimately it's best for New Zealand.
You talked about for private people as well. Now, one of the issues that I think that we see out there is there are private people who have got weed issues. I guess, Peter, from your perspective, Environment Waikato's perspective, what pressure now can you apply with will there be any government backing to support you to apply pressure back on?
Well, we've already got that. We've already got the mandate to do that through our regional plan anyway. Mm-hmm. We've got mandates out there for people to actually control their weeds within a certain boundary or over the whole of the property. So we've already got that aspect there, but it just gives us another lever to look at the neighbouring, if it's Crown land, that we can actually, if they've got a weed problem, we can now get back to them and say, can you actually control that and take respect of our policy, our pest management strategy. So it just gives us more teeth.
Mm-hmm. Jenni, do you think that we move fast enough with new weeds getting introduced? And I mentioned specifically, I guess, bristlegrass, because that's becoming a serious problem in the Waikato that's come down from Northland, supposedly in silage. It's not yet, I don't believe, declared noxious, but it's got the potential to get out of hand before that. Are we doing enough?
I think sometimes we're a bit slow in reacting to understanding how serious a problem can be quite quickly, and because of all the process you have to go through with consultation and policy documents, it is quite a slow process, and to act instantly is just sometimes very frustrating. It doesn't happen, and so consequently, when you see a problem, it could be 10 years or 5 years before action happens, and that is an issue for not only the rural community but also the urban community, and that's how we end up with all these pests, and then you've got a bigger problem financially, particularly.
But Mandi, though, like when you look at New Zealand, we've got 1,900, I think, native plants in New Zealand. We've actually introduced 23,000 plants into New Zealand. So you can virtually say you can nearly have one a week as actually becomes a weed. And I understand the frustrations about people about putting these into context. But how do we actually look at the whole issue? And I think this has got to come back as a national issue. We've actually got to start to identify some of these issues out there nationally, along with all our stakeholders collectively. So we've actually got some, we can all come together on that.
The thing is also, if you're going to pull something out, you have to actually put something back in its place. I mean...
That's right. When is a weed a weed? It's a plant growing in the wrong place. And that's it.
That's right, and it's filling a space. So you've got to fill it in with something else too.
Talking about filling in, Fonterra has announced, it was in Straight Whāro, I think, last week, the retirement of their CEO, or he's going to shift back to Canada. This is going to be some big boots to fill for the dairy industry. What do you think it's going to mean, Peter?
Well, I think Fonterra have always been aware that he was going to move on some stage, and I'd say that they've been out there, and I'd like to think they have been out there, sort of shoulder tapping or looking around the world about who they could actually replace that, not just around the world, but even internally in New Zealand. And I think they've actually been out there, bringing somebody along or identifying people. So I think we're in safe hands about where they're going.
Jenni, what do you think? We talked about this off camera. You've got some views.
I think that it's exciting for Fonterra that whoever comes in at least has got an organisation on the up, not the down, and things are looking really positive. I know that we have a bit of a different opinion about that for the future, but I think dairying is positive, and for somebody coming in, they can take a growing organisation that's going somewhere and knows where it's going and take it the next step up. And I think that's really exciting. It's absolutely critical for New Zealand, and if you look at what's happening at the moment in the South Island with the quake, we've got to earn some international dollars somewhere, and dairying at the moment is one of the ones that's on the up and exciting.
And Jenni, what you were talking about before was my comment around being at the ABARES conference in Canberra last week, where they're talking about having 2012 onwards dairy supplies building up and potentially the price relative to what it is for dairy products slowing down or coming back. I know that the banks are still talking, a $5.50, $6 payout. Do you think that that's potentially going to be hard, Peter, for a new CEO to come into, having potentially with Andrew leaving on a high? And
well, I think, but it's always been a challenge. It doesn't matter when you actually come into an industry, even if it's going on the way up, it's still a challenge to get everybody in line on that line. And if, I don't see. I think this is a challenge that the new CEO is going to actually have to address, and I think the board's already addressing some of those issues there. And you get quite a lot of conflicting interest about where the payout's going to go. I've just been talking to people from China, and they're sort of saying, well, protein's going to be a really important commodity for the next 20 years. So, we get both sides of the story, and I think we've got to have a value. The person who's going to be there, along with the board, have got to have a pretty good view of where the world's going.
Do you think we can do that internally, Jenni, or is it we're looking at an external appointment?
I think it'll be the best person for the job, and wherever that person comes from, whether it be New Zealand or overseas, so be it. I think New Zealand has got some really talented Kiwis, and they often go overseas and come back. And look at, what is there, over 1 million Kiwis, expats? Who knows that someone's out there, gone overseas and could come back. Equally, there could be somebody in New Zealand. It just has to be the best person. I don't think we should get hung up about where they come from. I mean, it's the biggest industry in New Zealand. We need a good person.
When Andrew came on board, was it 8 years ago, there was a big level of controversy around how much he was getting paid. Do you think we've got over that, and that we as an industry and as a country will be prepared to pay for the best person, Peter?
Well, to me, as long as he's doing the job and achieving the goals for the whole of New Zealand Incorporated and the farming sector, and as long as we're getting there, and he's got some tough decisions to make. I think the money is important, but it's not the overall context. It's about how he actually does the job, how he runs the business, and how he achieves the goals for New Zealand Incorporated. Because, like Jenni said and you said, it's dairying is the biggest industry out there, and it's got the ability to actually go further. And to me, I think we've got to go further to drive the economy of New Zealand, and that's one of the industries that I see as a real potential earner for New Zealand.
Now, Jenni, I'm surprised you didn't pick Peter up on his use of the word he, because of course there could be a woman out there, couldn't there?
I actually was going to do that, and I thought, no, what does he mean?
Sorry.
But look, it's just whoever. It could be male or female, but currently we have a male, so yeah.
Well, you never know, Mandy. It could be you.
I don't think so somehow. I don't think I'm politically correct enough. It's a nice thought, Peter.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks team. Coming up after the break, genetically engineered foods. Are they the answer for the world's 9 billion hungry people? Do we need to spend more on agriculture research and development? And forestry farmers are slow to claim carbon credits. How come? Stay tuned for more after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk. Genetically engineered foods now make up a major proportion of American diets. But are they the only way forward? Peter, what's your view on this?
No, I think there's a part to play with genetic engineering foods out there, but we've got to look at where we've actually can make the most money for New Zealand, and I think where we are at the present time, we've actually got a very valuable product that we've got. We haven't got a lot of GE products in New Zealand, but in some ways, yes, we are genetically modified because we're using the best technology out there to achieve those goals. But I think people, when I've gone around the world, are looking at really sort of homegrown foods without all this added value to it, and that's where I think we're going to get the most value for money. So, I think in some parts we've got to feed the world, but we've got to feed the whole world. And some parts of the world want to have non-GE foods, and other people might need that to be able to survive. At the present time, I understand there's only about a week's worth of food left in the world at any one time now. So we need to look at that with the population going. So,
Jenni, what do you think on this? I suspect you're going to have a very interesting view.
Well, I think that the most important thing is we cannot feed the world, New Zealand. I think the maximum food we can output is like 30 million people, so let's get real. And let's keep our competitive advantage. I don't support GE in New Zealand. We need, value add is really important, but it's our competitive advantage. And what are we going to do with clean green image? I mean, let's position ourselves. We've already done that. We've spent billions of dollars. People identify us in a certain niche product. We stay there and we hold on to it dearly, because at the end of the day, we cannot feed the world. We can contribute to it, but we are not the breadbasket of the world. And I don't want to get captured by it. I think it's too easy. It's a bit like the weeds. The minute you let something through the door, it spreads and then you can't pull it back. It's like varroa bee mite, all those things. Let's hang on to something that's really special, and I believe that's where the top end of the market wants. They don't want genetically modified food, and we don't actually know where it's going to take us. I mean, there's a lot of issues, and I'm no scientist, but about where it may lead us, and there are unintended consequences of GE.
So do you think that we're looking at, and this may be kind of a slightly un-PC thing to say, but are we looking at GE foods for the poorer part of our population who don't have the choice, and New Zealand has the potential to feed a niche market of consumers who can afford to pay for non-GE food?
Well, like looking at supermarkets in Europe, and there's there's the poorer people and the more affluent people there. And when you go and look at that, when I was in Germany, and there's certainly a market for both products. There's people going to look at both because of the value that they've got. So I don't think that we should distinguish between where it is. There's people out there that are affluent, they're happy to buy the GE food, but there's people out there, even in both markets, want to buy both sorts of food. So I don't see that we're trying to distinguish between one or another. We've got to give people a choice. And if that's what they want, we should give them the choice. But I think for New Zealand, I think we should sort of stay where we are, nice, clean, green image. And that's where we're going to achieve the results. But we've also got to be able to identify where those foods have come from. And you look at merino and that merino wool one, where you go and buy a shirt and you can actually go back to the farm where it is. So, if people can identify where it's come from, it's an important part.
So following on from the clean green image, Jenni, on Country 99 TV, they talked about 5,000 herds have now been downgraded in their TB status to only require testing maybe once every 2 years or beyond. How exciting is this, or is there a concern that maybe we let our biosecurity slip?
I'm on the conservative side. I'm always a bit nervous about letting things slip, because in actual fact we actually had a low TB status many years ago. We let it slip, we took our eye off the ball, and it ballooned out again. So let's say it's an easing back, but I'm a bit nervous letting it totally go. We must keep our eye on it, because if New Zealand got TB or any outbreak, our competitors would just love to knock us off the perch. And look at our dairy industry, for example. So it's critical. We cannot ease off. Yes, you can perhaps some areas make it easier for farmers to operate, because being on movement control is extremely difficult and frustrating. But never ever take your eye off the ball, because again, just like the weeds, billions of dollars, millions of dollars for a little country to haul it back again. and we've spent so much money, so we just have to keep an eye on it. I'm not overjoyed by it. I'm a little nervous. Farmers are still a bit slack about filling out forms and declaring exactly what's going on. I think with the NATE system, there's a potential to be more on the ball.
It's a national identification.
Yes. But we just cannot afford to be lackadaisical about those things. Biosecurity is huge. I mean, you know, I always declare when I go through customs that I'm a farmer, I'm proud to be a farmer, and I want to be protected. And we don't want foot and mouth or anything.
Well, we've seen what that's done to Korea, haven't we?
And Africa, South Africa.
You know, like Mandi, I came back through from Melbourne the other day, and what astounded me was that my bags never got x-rayed.
Tell me about it. How naked did you feel?
I felt really quite upset that I didn't get x-rayed because, you know, like, I could have brought back something, even though they might have x-rayed my bags or something over and they sent that back. But it just gave me some security to be x-rayed.
That's right, yeah.
You know, and I've got nothing to hide, but it just made me feel a lot happier about being, and I was quite astounded.
It was the same with me when I came back from Canberra, and it felt wrong. It just felt really wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think I'm a dodgy character like you, Peter, but I mean, you scream X-ray.
Yeah.
Hey, so now tell me, we've talked about a lot of things, but I just want to step now to forestry. And there's been a call for forestry owners who have got pre-1990 exotic forests to sign up for carbon credits, and they're not doing so. What's going on here? Why are they slow to hook up?
I think you're finding that the government, they were wondering where the government was going, and I think that's sort of slowed them down about where, the reason why they weren't certain whether we're going to have an ETS system or whatever. But we're seeing Australia bringing one in now, so I think you'll actually see them actually start to look at that and come forward, Mandi, to sign up to it. But I can understand the cautious of it out there not coming forward, but hopefully they do, because it does add a bit of money. It's something that people out there are very cautious about, about carbon trading and carbon and what the value of it is. But when you see where the whole world's going, I think there's people are wanting it. It's another form of income, and you're also actually protecting the environment further out there. So I think it's building credits out there, man.
I believe that people are cautious. There's never ever any free money, and if it's a credit, there's also a liability, and I would say they're weighing up the options. And for example, we have a forestry block, and we have not taken up, we're post 1991, we haven't taken up carbon credits that we could, because our forestry is due to be cut down in 5 years. And it's all very well getting the money today, but you have to pay it back tomorrow. And you don't know the cost or what that timber's going to be worth, so it's easier to be cautious and a little bit more contained, and gives you more certainty. And I'm not at all surprised that people are cautious, because if you got, for example, a change of government, the rules could change and you might have to pay it back, I don't know, overnight or whatever. So people are reticent. There's never ever a free lunch or free money. There's always a tag, and I guess people are just being cautious.
So do you think it is that we just there's not enough transparency? Again, I was in Australia last week at this conference, they were talking about the ETS, and there appeared to be a real lack of good information around what they were proposing with the ETS and all of those things. Are we seeing a similar thing here?
I think we are. I think people are still, we haven't got any really clarity around where we're going. And I think we need to have better descriptions around it. But we're seeing some of our major companies actually go there, now and for carbon trading, especially around the central North Island, around Lake Taupo and the Variation 5 that we've got. It's actually going in there. Some of those landowners are actually there. But the interesting thing there is that a lot of these people are only looking for large blocks, and I think we've actually got to start to have a strategy, and Environment Waikato is going down that way, to have a strategy to bring all the smaller blocks in so we can actually get size so people can actually get into this trading scheme.
I think there is an interest, like where we farm. I mean, we've got some gullies that would be perfect to fence off and plant. I don't want to plant in pine. I'd be more interested in like redwood, something that's 150 years, which is long-term sustainability, and it gives some certainty for the next generation and the next generation.
Fantastic.
But I was just going to say, Mandy, some of those sheep and beef farmers or people who've got lands, like Jenni was saying, it gives them added value. They can actually increase their production because they can retire that land and actually add value, put more land onto their, put more sheep onto their good land or whatever they want.
It's certainly something that I'm looking forward to doing on our farm as well. Coming up after the break, we asked Peter and Jenni what's pushed their buttons. Find out if it's going to be a rant or a rave. We will tell all after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk. It's time now for our weekly rant or rave. Okay, who's first? Jenni, I can see you're really fired up to go. What have you got for us?
I want to do a rave, first of all, for federated farmers and the farmer army. I think that what's going on nationwide for the Christchurch earthquake is stunning. It was so nice to see federated farmers come out on a positive note. So often they're not so positive about things New Zealand and in New Zealand, and it's great. And for example, young farmers as well, which I used to be involved with heavily. Otago young farmers, 68,000 raised at a sale in North Otago. I just thought that was stunning. And so that's my real rave. It's lovely to see the urban and rural come together at a time like this. Superb.
Got a rant?
I have. I've definitely got a rant. I'm so disappointed. As a newbie on the block to the wool industry, I'm really cross that the Wool Partners cooperative didn't get off the ground. I just can't understand it really, having come from the dairy industry. Everybody goes on about the cooperative being a successful model for the dairy industry. Why couldn't the farmers support a wool one?
Completely agree.
Totally, just nonplussed.
Well, my rave, Mandy, is it's along, I was going to sort of say, similar to what Jenni had about how the rural and the urban sector have come together so well in Christchurch. And that's got to be a plus for both sectors. And I think that's just really great for New Zealand Incorporated and how we can all actually work together. So I won't go too much into much more of a rave, but I just think that, that all those sectors have come together. Fonterra, federated farmers, young farmers, all the industries have come together really well. But my rant is maybe something to do with my job at Environment Waikato, is that when we were out there doing some policy work or looking at new issues around there, is that the bureaucrats from all these organisations come together and talk to us, but the politicians never front up and actually sort of have any input into the thing at my level. And I just think that if they want to be engaged and make sure that we have the right policies, those politicians, whether it be in Fonterra or Meat and Lamb or whatever else, we all should be around the table, from Dairy New Zealand, whatever, should be around the table at a political level having a discussion, because that's when we can actually make some decisions. And if I ask one thing, I think those people should actually step up. I know they've got their jobs to do, but their job is bigger than that, because as a politician, I've got to understand all these industry actions, but they don't seem to want to understand what local government or government does. So I want them to stand up and be a part of it.
Very frustrating.
It is.
Well, I've got a rant and a rave as well. Mine is to do with the call for Fonterra suppliers to pay an extra 5 cents a kilogram of milk solids to help with Canterbury earthquake. It's a fantastic idea, but Fonterra suppliers have already raised $3 million for the Canterbury earthquake, which is amazing when you think about it. That's just one organisation in 5 days. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable as a Fonterra supplier and a shareholder that the $6,000 that they're talking across the board in such a public forum, when there are a lot of dairy farmers out there who are really struggling with high debt levels, to now potentially feel like they're being tight and mean because they may not support a 5 cent a kilogram of milk solid levy. I just felt it was a fantastic idea, but a really unfortunate forum to put it out there in public.
Agreed.
Because to me, it just belies or belittles a little bit so much the farmers' work and contribution to the Canterbury earthquake.
It would be nice if they were asked first.
Yeah.
That's right, before it went public.
Yeah.
I certainly think we should have been asked first before it went public, because, we've got to look at the issues. What happens if there's another natural disaster in the Waikato or Auckland?
Yeah, I know that the Rural Support Trust were also asked to contribute, and that was another contentious issue because it makes you feel mean when you say, actually, we're going to be having people come into our communities from Christchurch. We want to be able to support them. So, hey, thanks, guys. It was a really interesting conversation, and I particularly enjoyed your rants and your raves, and go farm me army. That wraps up our latest edition of Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. I'd like to thank my guests, Peter Buckley, Chair of Environment Waikato, and Jenni Vernon, a sheep and cattle farmer from Wainato. Thanks to you too for watching. Remember to check out my blog online at country99tv.co.nz. I'd really love to hear from you. Catch you next week, and in the meantime, keep on talking straight.